Hey guys, this is Emily. And for this mini episode, I want to ask you a question before you start listening. And that is, when has there been a time in your life where you felt peaceful and excited and totally nurtured all at the same time? And as I ask that question, your mind will scan back and come up with a moment. Maybe it was somewhere outside in nature. And I'm asking you that, and as you recall that time and that feeling and that sensation in the body, it relates to, in this episode, you're going to hear me talk about an energy that I had been energy shopping for. When I gave birth to my first daughter, I had her naturally, and I had a doula who assisted. And before we went into the birth, she said, "Hey, I want you to have a place, a picture that you can go when things get intense, where you're taken care of and you can relax and you feel peaceful." And years before that, I had gone on a vacation out to Washington State and had a morning. I remember sitting in a cabin and the windows were open because it was summer, but it was still cold out there, in the mountains in the summer. And being under like warm, comfy flannel blankets, and the windows were open, and had a view of this beautiful mountain lake, and you could hear the water, the lake lapping onto the shore, giant evergreen trees, and the wind blowing through the trees and the birds. It was just, I remember that moment just being like, this is amazing. And I snapped a photo at that time. This is back when we used to print photos. So I had the photo. And I remember speaking with my doula before, and I said, I have the place. I know it. I mean, I had that picture with me all the time as I was preparing for the birth. And then during the birth, when things did get intense, I recalled that place and that energy, really, that energy of being really relaxed yet excited. And there just aren't enough words, right? And that's why I talk about energy shopping, which you'll hear more about in this minisode. But I wanted to refer and explain what I was talking about, because as I had mentioned that energy and recalled it again, and was having this conversation on my monthly call in the Thrive membership, after recalling that and talking to them about energy shopping for energies like that, I've actually in the last month had two recent occasions of that same energy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is that showing up in a brand new way because I've been asking for it and recalling it and knowing like this is something I'd like more of in my life. So last month I went to Baja, and you'll hear me talking about that in this episode, and had a moment where I got to re-experience that energy in a new way. And then I just got back from a different trip where, again, I was sort of sleeping in a structure to open air and woke up facing a mountain, hearing the ocean. I was like, wow, when we ask for things to show up in our lives and ask for energies, they really do in greater, different ways than we could expect. But I'd like for you to look at, what would you like to ask for in your life? What energies are nurturing that have peace and excitement, exhilaration all at the same time? So I hope you enjoy this mini episode, and this background gives you a little more info when I start talking about that sort of energy. All right, enjoy.
When you get to design, create, ask for the life and living you would like, it's truly just what would work for you. What would you like to be, to have, to create? At the end of your life, at least this lifetime, this body, you're the one that got to live it. And so at that point, I don't think I know anyone that wishes they would have paid attention to other people's judgments or points of view. Gets more like, oh, cool. Yeah. What else would I like to have chosen? As you guys know, I just got back from a few days in Baja, like a week with my girls. I knew we were going to be remote, but I didn't know there was actually a few days where we were on an island with no running water and no electricity and no Wi-Fi. And it was awesome. And that night I got into my tent, which had a nice bed in it, and it was all open air, and it was cold at night, and I was cuddled up, and there was this fresh breeze blowing in and total space and the sound of the ocean and nobody around. And I was like, this is that energy that I mentioned on the call. And I'm like, and I just received it in a totally new way, that it was like that magic moment when you're like, holy crap, when we ask for things and we're like, that I will have more of that. That is so nurturing and wonderful. And I had not expected that, as we don't, right? And it just showed up. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And how does it get even better? So if it didn't have to be linear and it didn't have to make sense, and you could go on this adventure, like what if 2024 could be where you really go, okay, I'm going to trust the way this universe works and ask and receive. And it's not linear. And I'm going to actually give myself the space to play. And yes, we're all impatient and we want stuff to show up now. But what if you could ask and add these energies and just see what shows up? And if you'd like more of nurturing or peace or joyfulness or laughter or silliness or whatever it is in your life, and you start asking for it, but also choosing it each day, I wonder what are the infinite possibilities for you for 2024, for beyond that, for everything you're creating. And what gift of allowance can you be for you, and allowed the points of view that are there to come up and just have them all be interesting and be kind to you and give yourself space and know that it's all okay. One of the things I was really struck with, again, like kind of being in that space of nature, and each morning, like each day was greater than the next day. I've wanted to swim with whale sharks for my whole life, but definitely like the last 25 years. And the morning we swam with them, there was like so many in the water. They come to that part of Baja to feed on the plankton this time of year. There's like a special current. They go there and it's like a plankton stew. So they're everywhere. And we went with this guy who's been studying that population for 20 years. So from a space of just real awe and these creatures, my goodness, jump in the water. And once we found one that just wanted to hang out and swim, he just like swam around, and everyone else jumped in and jumped out. And they're like, who else wants to stay in? I'm like, me, I'll stay in the whole time. So I just like stayed with this creature, and you'd swim, swim, swim. And it was a whole ecosystem. Like, just to remember you're never alone. Like, we're so supported. And to see this, he was about 8 or 9 meters. So that's like, I don't know, 28 feet. And there were all these remoras, those fish that kind of suck on things and clean things. So each fin had about, I don't know, 8 underneath. And there were some around his head, and the gills as they suck in all the water and plankton. And like, there's this huge expansion of that part of their head. And you can swim to keep up with them because it looks like they're going slow, but they're not going that slow. And then I would pause and let his whole body like go by, and you get the sense of like, and here's a 9-meter creature. And you kind of had to back up because his tail would almost hit me. It was amazing. And I was just so fascinated. And the day before that, we were swimming with sea lions. There was an island of like 500 or so where they come and they hang out and raise their pups. And all of the baby sea lions were coming up and like swimming around. And there was like thousands of sardines that you see if you've ever watched documentaries where they form those circles, right? And you could dive through, or the sea lion would dive through, and it would part in this beautiful circle. And I was like, and I get worried and stressed about stuff for what reason? You know, when you have those moments that you're like, I don't think any of that is relevant. So if you have moments where you get stressed or have stuff come up, a really great question to ask is this relevant? Or where have I made this relevant that it's actually not? And tap into that space of you, the infinite being. That space that nature so often gives us, that I love receiving from creatures, that's the space of you all the time. That is you. That's you, the infinite being. We just move away from that or forget it at times, right? And the further we get from that, the more painful stress like that comes up. But that's just because it's not you. So what else can you be and ask for to have that space that is you, the infinite being, where like all of that noise and other stuff and the problems and the worries and the stuff going on with other people and the judgments and all that, you really get, oh my God, none of it's relevant anyway. And go back to creation. What would you like to create as your life and living? What if you could just be curious about yourself and about other people, and what you could just explore and discover and change and learn. One of the things that was like a new choice for me in going on that trip was I often travel by myself and I arrange everything because I love that. And this time I went with a few strangers and I was like, well, this is nice because one, everything's just planned and taken care of. That's fun and really handy when you have two little girls. I was like, well, that's different. This is the energy of being really taken care of. Okay. I didn't know what it'd be like to be around all these people I didn't know, right? And that gift of allowance of curiosity of like, I wonder who this being is, right? Like, I wonder. And of course, we all have judgments or things that come up, but none of that's real. And there was one woman that was probably the most guarded at first. And I just kept in the question of, I wonder what that being is all about. And one of the last days, I had a conversation with her and just asked her some questions. And she had worked as or still does, as a forensic psychologist. So, you know how in the courts, if you plead insanity for horrific things, and her job is to work with them afterwards. And she said, well, this one patient wouldn't mind me talking about because he's now gone, but he was so fascinating. And it was Charles Manson. So she like worked with Charles Manson and also was a pen pal with Mother Teresa for years and worked with her over in Calcutta. And I would have never guessed about this woman. Like, she didn't speak the whole time. She was kind of walled off. And the more I asked her questions, these stories just kept coming out. I thought, wow, there are so many amazing people in the world, and everyone has their stuff, including us, right? And everyone also, we are infinite beings, and every drop of the ocean has its own beauty. And if you stay in that space of wonder and curiosity and allowance for you and other people, like, what if every interaction could truly be like a doorway to new possibilities, more beauty, more of the life that you're asking for? And I know one of my asks is to be just surprised and delighted by life. And that was pretty much the whole week was that. But interacting with a person like that, I was like, oh, that totally delighted and surprised me. I had no idea that was going to come up. So what else can you be surprised and delighted by, and who else? And how much fun can you have?
I hope you got something out of that. If you like these mini episodes, then please share it with someone you know who would love to hear it. And if you post about this episode on Instagram, you can tag me at Emily Evans Russell, because I always love reposting. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk with you soon.